Hello and welcome to this Prepare for IELTS speaking video. In this video, I will look at the Part 2 topic, Describe a successful thing that your friend has done. You should say who your friend is, what the success was, what he or she did, and explain how you felt about it. And then after the Part 2, I will look at a couple of Part 3 questions connected with this topic. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about my friend who passed his driving test. Now, in some of your countries, passing the driving test may not be a difficult thing to do, but it is in the UK and I know it is in many other countries. If it is something in your country that is not that difficult, then just change the type of test. You could use the IELTS test or a test to get into university and use the same kind of language but using a different test. I've decided to talk about my close friend who passed his driving test. Now you are probably thinking, that's not a big deal, but for him it was a major achievement, and I'll tell you why. When I first met him, he was in his mid-30s and couldn't drive. At that time, this was not an issue for him, as his office was within walking distance and he lives in a city with a good public transport network, so being able to drive was not a priority. Several years passed though, and his mum became ill. His parents don't live that far away, but when she was staying in hospital, it became difficult because the visiting times in the hospital made it tricky for him to get home because of the train and bus times. Due to this, he realised that his life would be easier if he could drive. He bought a course of lessons, took his test and failed. Not one to be defeated, he took more lessons and failed again. Sadly, it was not third time lucky, and he failed his third attempt. At this point, he decided to give up, because it was costing an arm and a leg to try and pass his test. 6 months later, his mum became ill again, and he decided to give the driving test another go. He was determined and practiced every waking moment, but it was to no avail, and his fourth test resulted in failure too. I really thought he would give up and never try again at that point. However, he persevered, and on the 5th try he passed. When he phoned to tell me, my first words were, "You're joking?" I couldn't believe it, and neither could he. I was incredibly proud of him, because it not only cost a fortune, but also it affected his self-esteem every time he was unsuccessful, but every time he picked himself up and tried again. Now, he has been driving for a few years, and I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but I still have not let him drive me anywhere. I'm not a good passenger, so when we go out, I always drive. So let's take a look at some of the language used in this topic. I've decided to talk about, make sure you know how you're going to start your answer in IELTS Speaking Part 2. Now you're probably thinking that's not a big deal, so I'm using this so I can get in some present continuous. You are probably thinking, you can say that to the IELTS examiner, they're not going to say, no I'm not. So it's just a way to add some present continuous. That's not a big deal. If something is a big deal, it's a big thing. If it isn't a big deal, it's not a big thing. A major achievement, a big success. And I'll tell you why. So I'm just using these different expressions here to give my answer some organisation, but it also adds some grammar. He was in his mid-30s. Always remember, don't say somebody was 35. Try to use more complex language. In his early 30s, in his mid-30s, in his late 30s. Now, if something is within walking distance, it means you can walk there easily. A good public transport network, You could use this to talk about your hometown, and always remember negatives. If your hometown does not have a good public transport, you say it has a rubbish public transport network. Being able to drive was not a priority. If something is a priority, it means it's very important. If it's not a priority, it's not that important. Very useful language, also for task 2 writing. When she was staying in hospital, to try and get some past continuous in there to impress with grammar. When you visit a hospital, they usually have visiting times, so between 6 and 8 p.m. Tricky, try to get used to using this word instead of saying difficult. Due to this, because of this. A course of lessons. When you have a number of lessons, we call them a course of lessons. Not one to be defeated. This means he is not a person who quits easily, who gives easily. If you're defeated, you are beaten. But he's not one to be defeated, so he was going to try again. But sadly, unfortunately, it was not third time lucky. In English, we often say third time lucky. So sometimes a bad thing happens, then another bad thing happens, but often you get lucky on the third time. But he didn't. It was not third time lucky, and he failed his third attempt. So here we can use different nouns and verbs when talking about this test. To attempt, an attempt. To try, a try. Both are nouns and both are verbs. To give up, to quit. Here we have an idiomatic expression. It's quite informal. Don't use it in IELTS writing. To cost an arm and a leg means to cost a lot of money. He decided to give the driving test another go. To give something another go means to try it again, to do it again. Now, for this topic, you're talking about a person's success. They've probably been determined. This means very focused, very motivated to try and achieve this. He practiced every waking moment. Now, he didn't. That would be impossible. But I'm using this for complex language. Every waking moment means every moment that you're not asleep. It was to no avail. This is very complex, can be used formally. If something is to no avail, it means you tried and you put a lot of effort in, but you didn't get the success that you wanted. So it was to no avail. So he practiced and practiced and practiced, but he didn't succeed. To give up, to quit, to persevere. Quite a complex verb, and it means to not give up and to keep going, to keep continuing to try to achieve your goal. He persevered. On the 5th try, on the 5th go, on the 5th attempt. You're joking. We use this a lot in English. When somebody says something and you're quite shocked by it, you say, you're joking. So it's an expression to show your surprise, your shock, your disbelief at something. To be proud of someone. To cost a fortune. This is slightly more formal than to cost an arm and a leg, so you could use this in IELTS writing, and it means to cost a lot of money. A fortune is a huge amount of money. Your self-esteem is how you regard yourself, how you feel about yourself, and if something affects your self-esteem, it makes you feel not very good about yourself. We also talk about to lower your self-esteem, so it reduces your self-esteem. When something bad happens, you need to pick yourself up, and it means to say, okay, this is really bad, but I'm going to try again. You pick yourself up. Some very complex grammar here, the present perfect continuous. He has been driving for. I'm a bit embarrassed to say this when there's something that you don't feel comfortable saying. I'm not a good passenger. If you're not the driver in the car, you are the passenger. And when somebody says I'm not a good passenger, it's usually because you get afraid when somebody's driving, you feel scared when another person is driving. So in this topic, it is difficult to come up with a list of words that are useful, but I think it is good to talk about someone's success where they've had repeated failures, and so then you can use things like determined, he didn't give up, to try again on the fourth try, on the fifth attempt. It just gives you a little bit more vocabulary to use. So let's have a look at a few part 3 questions connected with this topic. So because this topic is about success, they might ask you, what kinds of people are considered successful? Well, nowadays, YouTubers and reality TV stars are who the younger generation consider to be successful. So YouTubers are people who make videos on YouTube. Reality TV stars are people who appear on singing programs like American Idol, The Voice, and have become successful because they've been on a TV program. Due to the astronomical amount of money they get paid, professional footballers are also regarded as major achievers. So we said to cost a fortune, to cost an arm and a leg. This is a little bit more formal, the astronomical amount of money. That means the huge amount, the big amount of money. A major achiever is a person who is very successful. I feel that wealth and the number of followers on social media are signs of success in contemporary society rather than achievements that make the world a better place. So wealth, having money, number of followers on social media, so the number of people that follow you, are signs of success. So we're talking about what kinds of people are considered successful. So these are signs of success, indications of success. And instead of saying nowadays all the time, you can say in contemporary society. Another question you might get asked is, does a university degree guarantee a successful career? In the past, I would say absolutely it did. Nowadays, though, virtually everyone has a degree, so they've become nothing special. So in the past, I would say, so I'm saying in the past, this is what I would have said. Absolutely it did. So I'm saying yes. But nowadays, virtually everyone, you can use this in writing as well, and it means almost everyone has a degree. So this is certainly true in the UK. Everybody has a degree. So you're nothing special. You're not different if you have a degree nowadays. Because of this, a university degree is not the only requirement to get a top job. You need work experience too. So a top job, a very good job, work experience. So when you apply for a job, they want to know your qualifications, that's your university degree, but they also want to know about your work experience. And often it's the people with more work experience that gets the jobs. However, it is impossible to get experience without a job. Many McDonald's employees have degrees, so having a degree is not the key to a successful career, I'm afraid. So again, I'm just saying again that a degree is not a guarantee. You need the experience, but it's very difficult to get the experience without a job. And having a degree is not the key, like the most important thing, the key to a successful career, I'm afraid. We often use I'm afraid when you're sorry about something, you're showing regret about something. You could even use it when you don't know the answer to something in an IELTS exam. If they ask you and you say, I have no idea what to say for this question, I'm afraid. And it's just another way of saying I'm sorry. Hope you found that useful. Thank you very much for watching.